Hello and welcome to episode 140 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. And joining me as always is the effervescent League Freak. You can find on Twitter at League Freak. How you going, mate?
I'm fizzing for this one. I can't wait. This will be fantastic. This is our first season preview that we've done because we started the podcast after the season had kicked off last year. So this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be lengthy, and we've also found a way to be informative and possibly even entertaining. How's that for you people?
Pretty incredible, really. I mean, we're just all-rounders.
What more do you need?
Yeah.
So we'll be looking at every team in detail for the upcoming NRL season. And not only will we be looking at every team in detail and talking about them all, we're also going to bring in a ranking system for each coach and their likelihood of surviving the season. And we're going to call this ranking the coronavirus ranking.
Yes.
So if you're next to no risk, then we'll give you one roll of paper. A slight risk, you get 1 pack of 8 rolls. Medium risk, it's 2 packs of 12 rolls. Higher risk will be 3 packs of 24 rolls. And if they're definitely going to get axed for sure, then they've got 5 packers of 36 rolls and probably even a brawl in a supermarket aisle.
Did you see that video?
That's fantastic, isn't it?
It really was. Like, people were saying, oh, look at this. I was like, we need more of that at supermarkets.
I'd like to see the next UFC event being held in the aisle of a Coles and just have 1 toilet paper roll in the middle of the floor and just 2 angry people fighting over it in the end.
And they've got to play duck, duck, goose to win it.
Well, just fight to the death over it.
One of the two. That'd be good. I'd like that.
It'd be the what would we call it? The United Fighting Coronavirus Victims or something like that. I don't know. There's merit there. Something can happen there. People with much more comical ability will be able to make something out of that.
Yeah.
I'll just put the seed out there. Someone else can do the rest of the work.
That's how I like to work my life, eh? Idea out there and let someone else do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. Alrighty. Shall we get into this bad boy?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we're going to go in alphabetical order because why the hell not? So we're going to start with the Brisbane Broncos. So they've made a few changes. Obviously, the big news is that's come out in the last few days is that Darius Boyd is going to retire at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So
look, he's been a problem for them, you know, and at least now they've got an end date for that problem.
Yeah, it's a problem they created.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But I wonder if he's going to get a payment for retiring early because, you know, he's given up 1 year of salary and it'd be a fair salary that he's given up.
Well, we're talking 800,000 to 900,000.
Yeah. And I just wonder if he's just walking away from that or if they've worked out some deal where he gets a percentage of that they tack onto their cap this year so that next year he's completely off the cap and that's it, you know? Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I'll tell you what else was interesting was seeing how many journos who were laying the boot into him last year were talking about, let's look at Darius's great career. He's been such a great player.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, they literally ran campaigns. I mean, there was even former Broncos players who were disgustingly telling him to, you know, retire immediately.
Yeah, quit. Sacrifice all that money that you're going to earn.
Yeah. And for some of them who didn't give up a cent in their lives for any reason. So, yeah, it was interesting. But, you know, that's what you expect out of the media these days.
That's true. So do you have the ins and outs of each team there?
I don't think I do, hey.
That's all right. I'll find them.
Yeah, looking at their team, the Broncos are a really, really weird team this year because on paper I really like their team. But there's some issues that I have with it. Number one being that their forward pack, their best players are so young and they're going to have inconsistency problems because they're so young. And so some weeks they're going to look like world beaters up front, and other weeks you're just going to wonder what's wrong. And that will change as they get more seasons under their belt. But I mean, their two best players are teenagers still.
Yeah.
And that's going to be an issue for them. I love the addition of Brodie Croft. I think he's exactly what they needed. I think that the Storm was silly for letting him go and that their season fell apart as soon as they dropped him last year. The back line, it's a bit hit and miss. I would love to see Jack Bird play a handful of games in a row. That would be fantastic.
Value out of him for a change would be good, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, has there been a least valuable player in the NRL than him? I mean, even Darius Boyd, if you look at how poorly he's played last year, at least he was playing,
Matt Moylan.
Matt Moylan, well, yeah.
He's in that category.
He's in that category.
So the Broncos have got, as you said, Brodie Croft from the Storm, Jordan Kahu returns after 1 year at the Cowboys, Jesse Arthurs from the Titans, and Ilakina Vidogo, Keenan Palacia, Jamil Hopewadi, and Xavier Coates have all been upgraded from development contracts, and they've lost Troy Dargan to South, Patrick Mogo to South, Matt Gillette, Sean Fenton, and Sam Tagatisi all retired. George Fye and James Seguiaro are both released or unsigned, and Gahamet Shibasaki's gone to the Knights.
So I mean, it really all comes down to they lost Gillett and they've brought in Croft. Gillett's going to be a loss, but that young pack, there was going to be a point where they needed to have these young players really carrying the team at some point,
Yeah. There's talk that Jack Bird's going to be fullback, and I think for a bloke who's hardly played any footy over the last 2 years, I would not be throwing him in at fullback. I'd be putting him at centre where you can hide him a bit until he gets his match fitness up and he can prove that he can stay fit.
100%.
So, I mean, I've got their best 17. So this is not the round one lineup, obviously, because I'm not taking into account injuries at the moment. This is their best lineup for 2020 I've got for them is Sarkot fullback, Corey Oates, Xavier Coates and Jack Bird in the centres, Darius Boyd on the wing, Milford and Croft in the halves, Lodge, McCulloch, Haas in the front row, Glenn, Fafita, Offa and Gowie in the back row, Pangai Jr., Staggs, Carrigan and Flegler on the bench.
See, I would have Staggs in the centres, personally.
I was impressed with Xavier Coates last year.
Yeah.
Reminds me a bit of Naden from the Panthers. He's tall, he's lanky, but he's also got a bit of power and a bit of speed. And we've got a new rule which has come into the game this year where, previously, if you were an attacking player jumping to catch the ball, you were allowed to be tackled by the defence. That rule's now been scrapped, so it doesn't matter if you're an attacking player or a defending player leaping for the ball, you cannot be tackled in the air. And I think tall blokes like Coates are going to be absolute targets, sitting just one in from out wide.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they'll put him in there for that. That's just my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah, that is going to be really interesting to see how teams deal with that tactically on defence. I wonder if when you get close to when an opposition team gets into attacking position on the line, if you see the centres and wingers almost switch positions, because the centres will maybe be able to handle physically the wingers that are coming down with the ball a little bit better, and the wingers can maybe run interference and maybe get the ball before it gets out to the winger on the opposition team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think the other thing too is you might even see second rowers defending out where centres usually do on the last, so they can drop back and offer a bit more defence for exactly the same reason. And you'll just have a lot more bigger blockers hanging out way out wide. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I'm not too sure it's a positive or good rule, but it is what it is, and we're stuck with it.
I don't think it is. I think that I can't remember any player really getting tackled in the air legally or even illegally in those positions where they were put in a dangerous position, because the way that the game sort of falls in that, instance, if you're running onto the ball as an attacking player, you've got all the momentum and you tend to not get put in a bad position. But
no, because the defender's going to be either flat-footed or trying to jump from a flat-footed position, which means they're always going to be lower.
Mm-hmm.
So there's chances of them doing any sort of serious hit are very, very low. So it's weird that they've scrapped it. But anyway,
I tell you what, with that type of rule where you can't tackle an attacking player in the air when they're near your try line, how good would Israel Folau be to have for every single team in the NRL with that rule?
Exactly right. Exactly right. I think the one concern for me is that this allows a door opening for AFL players to come to rugby league now.
Yeah, but they get credited with a catch even when they drop it.
I know. I know, but it's not going to be much different. That might be the next thing. We might have it so you just have to score touchdowns. You just got to touch the ball in the end goal, and that's a try.
That's, what, I've seen that being brought up. When they get a brains trust together and say, what rule changes would you make? And some idiot always comes up with that.
I know, it's absurd. All right, so coronavirus rank for the coach there.
Well,
I've
got him at level 3. So what's that?
That's 2 packs of 12 rolls.
Okay, because I think that because this is a weird team, this is a really weird team. If they play to their potential, they're a premiership threat, in my opinion. But if they don't, I think that the Broncos will cut their losses, because I think Seabold isn't a good coach, and he's always got some drama going. Like even in this preseason, he's had a bunch of drama issues, and I think that they might just cut their losses with him at some point. I think that the Broncos are going to miss the finals.
Yeah, I've got him. I've also got him at 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think this year he's going to struggle because, as you said from the top, it's a young team, so there's going to be inconsistencies, and they've got rid of most of their experienced players.
Mm-hmm.
And next year could actually be worse because they're going to be getting rid of even more of their experienced players and having just rookies from top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
If he can't get consistency out of them this year, and he barely got it last year, I think they will axe him as soon as they can. Who they replace him with, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they got rid of him pretty quickly.
Can I just say, if the Broncos axe him and they go back to Wayne Bennett again, they need to be wound up.
Yeah, they do. So I've got them finishing 9th.
Okay.
Where do you have them coming?
I had them coming 9th as well.
There you go. Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the Canberra Raiders, last year's runners-up. So they've got new faces, Curtis Scott from the Storm, George Williams from Wigan, Tom Starling and Harley Smith-Shields have both been upgraded from development. And they've lost Jordan Rapana, who's gone to Japanese rugby. Ada Hingano has gone to Mackay. Royce Hunt has gone to the Sharks. Brad Abbey and Ruben Porter have been unsigned. Aiden Caesar's gone to Huddersfield, and Joe Lelua's has gone to the Tigers.
They had a great year last year. They were a little bit of a surprise packet. I think Jack Whiten was a big part of their success last year. He took that step up. He finally looked comfortable at 5'8", and he was playing like a monster for most of the season. He was fantastic. I look at this Raiders team now, and I see a team where their halfback, and I wasn't a big fan of Caesar. I thought Caesar was a reserve grade player, but their halfback is an English halfback, and England do not produce halfbacks. I think this is a massive error by the Raiders, and I was thinking about it. Why would you go down this road? I wonder if Ricky Stewart has seen George Williams and said, I can build him up into the halfback I've always wanted to build up. And we've seen him take a young halfback and ruin them a number of times. And they've left Stewart's coaching and been better elsewhere. And I just wonder if this is one of his projects because they don't have a halfback this season.
Yeah, George Williams, I don't know, I think he's got the basics of a halfback, which is he's got a decent passing game left to right. He does have a decent kicking game. He's just British Aiden Caesar for me. And I don't know that that's enough to get you a premiership. He's got a lot of strike players all around him everywhere else, but it's hard to know how he's going to go. He just hasn't been tested at this level. It's just hard to know if he's going to get the speed and everything else of the game here and the defensive workload because he's going to have a lot of huge bodies running at him. And they're not going to be 40-year-old former NRL players. They're going to be blokes in their prime.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I just think, I can't believe that they've put themselves in this position as a club. You know, at least Aiden Caesar would give you the most vanilla halfback experience you could possibly have in rugby league, and they've downgraded from that. I just think it's ridiculous.
The only thing I think of is they've got two very tall wingers in Kotrick and Simonson, or Simmons, or whatever. I think maybe they're just working with George to do crossfield kicks. He'll just be Mitch Moses.
Man, I would take Mitch Moses 1,000 times over ahead of George Williams. Like, I really do. I think that this is a catastrophic mistake, and the sort of mistake where if they had had any sort of halfback in there, I'd have been saying, watch out for the Raiders this year. I consider them to not have a halfback this year. I think that it is going to cost them a season. I wouldn't be shocked if he played most of the year in reserve grade. I think he'll be found out really early on. And I think when you couple that with Josh Hodgson is another year older, is going to be more injury prone, I think the Raiders are going to finish in third place. I've got them finishing in third place because I like the majority of the rest of their squad, but they're not going to win the premiership this year.
I've got them at fifth, but that's not to say that I think they're going to be not a premiership contender. I think they're still in their premiership window, but I'd probably say that this might be the last or second last year in that premiership window. So the best lineup I've got for them in 2020 is Nickel Clockstad at fullback, Kotrick, Croker, Scott, and Simonson in the back line, White and Williams in the halves, Soliola, Hodgson, Papali in the front row, Bateman, Whitehead, Tapani in the back row, Horsburgh, Sutton, Louis, and Gula on the bench. They've got decent forward depth. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, 100%. And look, that's why I've got them in third place for the regular season. I think that they're going to be super consistent. Papali he was the best front rower in the world last year. He was incredible, especially in the final series. In the finals, he was just a destroyer of worlds. But yeah, they haven't got a halfback. You need a halfback to win a premiership, and they've screwed up.
Yeah. Coronavirus rank for Ricky Stewart. What do you reckon?
Number one, he's safe as houses.
Yeah.
But I think that it would be the following season that he might have some issues.
Yeah, I've got him at one as well. I think he's safe.
Okay. Where did you have them? You had them finishing fifth, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next, we move on to the Bulldogs. So they've got Joe Stimson has come in from the Storm, Dean Britt from South, Sione Katoa from the Panthers, Isaiah Tass has been upgraded from development, and Jake Avarillo has been upgraded from the lower grades, and they've lost Kennelly Lemueli to the Cowboys, Michael Leaker, Danny Fuawalo, John Olive, New Brown, Kane Lee Kalash have all been unsigned. Just letting people walk out the door.
Yeah, and I think they needed a little bit of that.
Yeah, I, I would have hung on to Fualolo and Leisha. I know Leisha hasn't been the gun that they expected, but it can't hurt to have depth in the spine. I don't, it's just nuts.
I don't know. I think that with a player like him, I think that you, at some point, you say to yourself, do we hold on to a fringe first grader, or do we roll the dice on a youngster who might give us more than that? It's the consistency is great to have in some instances, but I think they've got to aim for more at some point. And I think that they needed to clean out anyway.
Oh, they need to clean out, absolutely. Um, yeah, it's going to be hard to see them improving, given that they're not going to have foreign at all year.
Yeah.
That's a big problem they've got there. So I've got them finishing 14th.
I had them finishing 11th.
A bit more faith than I do. I mean, the good thing about them is they are not easy beats.
No.
But they just lack that little bit of polish to get those close games into victories. And I don't know that they're any close to that situation for 2020. I don't think they're a bad team. I just think they're going to struggle at the very back end of games to clinch them when they need to.
Yeah, and I kind of feel as though they're going to be pretty much what they were at their best last year. And that's I think that the teams that are really poor, they'll be better than those teams. But when push comes to shove, as you say, they won't have the polish to beat the better teams in the competition. I'm looking forward to watching Lachlan Lewis this year. I think he's going to take a bit of a step up, and I hope that he can get through this season without too many injury concerns and things like that, because I think that he could possibly be a bit of a future star for them if he can stay on the field. Watini Zelezniak at fullback needs to really step up his game this year. This is the position he wanted to be in, and he needs to show why he deserves that position. I think that, Pay had a lot of critics last year, and there were some really tough times for the team, but I think he showed that he was doing a coaching job on them towards the end of the year when they went on a little bit of a run, and I expect that we'll see some progress from that at the start of the year. But yeah, I just think that once again it's going to come down to not having the firepower at the end of the day that the teams above them will have, but they'll have more consistency than the teams below them.
Yeah, their salary cap is still a little bit messy, but it's rapidly improving, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go on a shopping spree at the end of the year when Foreign's contract ends this year. So
I think he is, yeah. And look, they shouldn't re-sign him.
No one's going to sign him at this stage just because of his injuries. When he gets on the field, he's worth every cent he's paid, but it's just getting him on the field. So their best lineup I've got down for him is Watini Zelezniak at fullback, Meaney, Hopper, Wadi, Holland and Ockenbaugh in the three-quarter line, Cogger and Lewis in the halves, Tolman, Marshall King and Napper in the front row, Harawira-Naera, Jackson, Elliott in the back row, Katoa, Stimson, Britt and Fatala Mariner on the bench. A lot of people aren't too keen on Kerrod Holland, and I can understand why. But I think they need a goal kicker in there who's a little bit more reliable than a part-timer. I think he's probably a little bit better than any of the other options they've got there.
And the thing is, too, if they get rid of him if they take him out the lineup and they put somebody in that's maybe, they're not going to be a great deal better. It's not going to be the thing that makes them a premiership winner. I mean, there's definitely still stuck in a development phase for this club and a rebuilding phase from the absolute debacle that they were left in.
Yeah, I think he'll be fighting with Remus Smith for that centre position. Smith, I think, is a slightly better player with more potential, but I think probably start the year with Holland, go from there. If they need to make changes, if they've been losing too many games, you can bring Smith in and try and add a little bit of extra spark from there. But it's not a bad back line. I'm expecting a big year from Okenbor in this side. He's got a lot of Jamal Idris about him, but faster.
Yeah, more foot speed. And I agree with you. Like, there were times last year where he may just sit up and take notice of him.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the consistency, as you don't get with some younger players. But I agree with you. I would like to see him stamp his authority and make that first grade spot his own.
Absolutely. Now, coronavirus rank there for Dean Pay?
I have him at number 2 on the scale.
Yeah, I've got him down at 3, and not because I don't think he's going to leave or that he deserves to, but I do worry that the Bulldogs will think that we've gone too long without any finals performances and we need those sooner rather than later. And I worry that they'll see him as part of the problem, not part of the solution, when he actually is part of the solution.
Yeah, and that would be the sign of a board that is weak, quite honestly, if they do that. Yeah. He has the side he started with last year was one of the worst lineups in first grade that I've seen for a very long time. And to do what he did with them was a minor miracle. The fact that they're where they are at now is incredible. But he's still working with, one hand tied behind his back in terms of what the salary cap was and the lack of development that the club did before he got there. So, they need to let him finish the job. The only thing that worries me is because of the lineup that he has got and the lack of cattle that he's got to work with, if they got just 1 or 2 key injuries, it could go really bad really quickly, and that worries me. And that's why, otherwise I would have him as, completely safe.
Yeah.
But I could see it going really bad really quickly, unfortunately. I hope it doesn't, but we'll see. That's why they play the games.
Exactly right. We move on to the Sharks now, and they've brought in Connor Tracy from the Rabbitohs. Jesse Ramian comes back after an unhappy stint at the Knights. Maween Hiroti from the Rabbitohs and Royce Hunt from the Raiders. And they've lost Jaden Brayley to the Knights, Saifeki to Castleford, Cole Flanagan to the Roosters, Paul Gallen's retired, Kurt Capewell to Penrith, and Aaron Gray has not been retained. They've had some pretty big losses. But with Paul Gallen retiring, to me it kind of feels like it's now the end of the old Sharks, and we're now fully in the John Morris era.
Yeah.
And to me, I see this as quite an exciting time for the Sharks as they move forward into this new era, because what we saw from them last year was something we hadn't seen under the Flanagan regime, and that is a team that can score tries.
Yeah, they were fun to watch.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he was, I still think he was easily the coach of the year last year. He walked into a thankless job last year and did he coached the hell out of them.
Let's be honest, he walked into a shit show.
Yeah.
Like, there was player misbehaviour going on everywhere. There was a coach who just got sacked for, life-ish.
Ish.
And brought through a ton of youngsters.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we hadn't seen much of at the club there, and they played out of their skin. And I think he did a fantastic job. Definitely massively underrated coach last year. He should have been coach of the year completely.
Mm-hmm.
But he still has, now he has 3 issues at the club.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Josh Dugan, Josh Morris, and Matt Moylan. And Josh Morris is an issue because he wants to leave.
I think I'm sure I heard reports that they were about to grant him that release, and it was conditional on the Roosters doing something, and I can't remember what it was.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was asking the Roosters to pay nearly all of his wage.
But I feel like there was something extra to it, and I can't remember what it was. Oh man, I wish I could remember. But from memory, they would do. It was a board decision. It wasn't the coach. The coach wanted to keep him.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one. They can afford to lose pretty much all three. It will mean that they'll have to bring in a rookie or two, but the rookies they've got to bring in have already had a taste of footy last year and looked the goods. If all three, or I suppose Morris is probably likely to go before the other two.
Mm-hmm.
So that would give John Morris, the coach, an opportunity to, get some more game time under the belts of these other youngsters, because I dare say they're going to be leaving at the end of the year, and Moylan is contracted, I think, until the end of next year. I can't see either of them being retained.
I got a question for you with the Sharks.
Mm.
We were both really impressed with what they did last year and the youngsters they brought through. But I feel like this season's going to be harder for them and it's going to be a step back. Do you feel the same way?
I've had a few people say that, and I look at them and think, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a season pretty much identical to last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've got them down finishing 7th.
Okay.
And it'll be not because they're beating the teams above them like they are capable of doing, but because they'll beat the weaker teams that are below them on the ladder. And I think their 17 squad is better than at least 8 of the teams there.
I have them finishing 10th.
Yeah, I know. They've still got a very strong forward pack.
But I tell you why I've got them finishing 10th, right? Because Moylan is a problem. Moylan is going to give... If Moylan gives them anything this year, it's more than I'm expecting out of him. Morris is going. I think Bronson Sherry is going to become an issue in terms of where he's going next year. I think they're going to have to really pony up the money if they want to keep him. The main thing for me is I think Sean Johnson is going to be a big issue for the club. I was really disappointed with how he played last year. And that they were very lucky. They had Flanagan that really papered over some of the problems they had in their halves, and some of the when Johnson wasn't there, Flanagan stepped in and was fantastic, to the point where I thought that they should have stuck with him and tried to move Johnson on. Unfortunately, they lost Flanagan to the Roosters, and I have no faith in Sean Johnson, unfortunately, anymore. I also worry about Andrew Fafita. I think last year he was a bit disappointing at times. And I just feel as though it could go wrong for them this year, and I don't know why. I just look at some of the players in their lineup. Like, I've never rated Woods. I heard Woods is training the house down in pre-season, which is
I must admit,
sign.
I saw him in the trial the other day against I can't remember who it was. Warriors, Manly. It was Manly. Mm-hmm. He looks like he's lost body fat, but he doesn't look like he's lost any actual physical size.
Okay.
So, and I dare say he's probably done that to try and increase his minutes. I mean, one thing you can say about Aaron Woods, he's never been a player who only played for 30 or 40 minutes. You always got at least an hour out of him, which is pretty good for a prop forward.
Yeah.
So it looks like he's still going to have that big motor on him to do those big minutes, which is going to help the prop rotation, I guess. So I suppose that could be a good thing. They need Wade Graham fit for at least 20 games this year. I like the look of Jack Williams. He's going to be a very dynamic lock for them.
Yeah, he looked really good at the end of last year.
And then on the bench, I mean, Braden Hamlin-Uele was just a beast last year off the bench. There's got a young bloke coming through who I think might actually be in the top 17. That's Toby Rudolph.
Mm-hmm.
He was immense in the trials. Just a hard running, raw boned sort of power player. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes his way into the 17. So the best lineup I've got for them for this year is Dugan at fullback, Morris, Cherry, Ramian, and Mulatalo in the 3/4. Johnson and Townsend in the halves. Fafita, Blake Brayley, and Aaron Woods in the front row. Nakora, Graham, and Williams in the back row. Hamlin Ueli, Bakuya, Magoulis, and Rudolph on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
They've always, for many years now, they've always had one of the best forward packs and good forward depth, and that hasn't really changed much.
It's true. The thing about the Sharks, there's just something about them. I worry about them this year. I feel like it's gonna fall apart a little bit for them this year, and I don't know why, because Morris did such a good job last year when they were in a much worse situation than they are now. I just do. I think they're going to take a step back this year.
All right, so what's your coronavirus ranking there for John Morris?
My coronavirus ranking for him is 2.
Yeah, I've got him at 2 as well. I think the only risk we've got there is the Sharks have got into this habit of reaching the finals pretty much every year for the last several years now. And if they don't advance past the first week of the finals, could get another board, and they're going, we need someone better. Because there was talks they were looking for someone last year as well.
And you know what? The Cronulla board, they're going to have some issues this year in terms of they won't be playing at home. They'll be playing at Cogra Oval. And so there could be some issues that they're having to deal with. And when you can palm them off onto, the coach is the problem, and we've got this, new shiny coach to look forward to next year, because that's how some of these boards look at stuff, They just try and save their own skin.
Exactly. All right, we'll move on to the Titans now.
Yeah. Everyone's so excited about the Titans this year.
Yeah, that was kind of the sound that all of the fans make for them as well. They've brought in Jonas Pearson from the Dragons. Darius Farm has been upgraded from development. Greg Lili Suiao from the Eels. I've pronounced that completely wrong. Bo Fermor from the Knights and Sam Lasoni from the Warriors. And they've lost Michael Gordon and Will Matthews, who have retired. Jesse Arthur to the Broncos. Riley Jacks has gone back to the Storm. Brinko Lee's gone to the Storm. Jack Stockwell has been unsigned. And Lailani Latu has gone to Warrington. There's a lot of ins and outs there, and the ins don't cover the outs.
They're so underwhelming.
They are. And I suppose one other loss for this year only is Ryan James is going to miss the whole year, it seems, with an injury. And that, we saw the impact his omission had in 2019. And that's going to hurt him so much.
And even worse than that, Callum Watkins is going to be playing for them this year. So, that's a double blow.
Wow. On the up, Ash Taylor wants to play because he's a dad.
That's good. That's always good when you got $1 million worth of your salary cap running out there again. That's awesome. Yeah. I think that this is really close to the worst lineup in the league. In fact, I think it is the worst lineup in the league. I don't see too many bright signs for them. It'll be interesting to see how Brian Kelly plays this year. I was really impressed with him last year. But, the rest of them, I could just skip.
just skip.
Yeah.
They're not exactly a side that sort of makes you go, wow, yeah.
Exactly.
The Titans.
Yeah. The thing about them is, right, Brian Kelly and Tyrone Peachey are the two players that I watch them when they play for the Titans. But if you switch the entire rest of the lineup for a Queensland Cup team, I would be more interested to see that and to see how they play at NRL level than watching this actual Titans team.
Yeah, I don't know. They've got a new coach, Justin Holbrook. How do you think he's going to go?
Well, he had great success in Super League with St Helens, And if that's anything to go by, he'll be an absolute failure in the NRL. And like, it's up to him to prove that he's an NRL coach. I tell you what, he's walked into a terrible situation. We said last year, really, really bad job to take on. But at least he's living on the Gold Coast, which will be nice for him. And, oh man, it's just going to be a really rough year for the Titans, I think.
Yeah, they've not cleared enough names off their roster at the end of this year because they've got so many underperformers in that team. They need to put the broom through the place, and they just haven't. They've hung on to too many bad performers.
Yeah. When you think about Mal Meninga was brought in at the beginning of last year, I believe it was, to sort out the problems that the club has. And they're probably in a worse position now than they were this time last year.
Yeah.
Like, and you look at this team and I'm like, what the hell are they doing? And that's got to be on Mal Meninga's shoulders.
Well, let's have a look at the best lineup that I've got for them anyway. So fullback, we've got AJ Brimson, who I genuinely believe is a quality star player. No doubt about it. Anthony Don, Brian Kelly, Tyrone Peachy, Philip Sammy in the back line, Tyron Robertson, Ash Taylor, the dad, in the halves. Fatuiaka, Peets, and Wallace in the front row. Proctor, Hipgrave, and Arrow in the back row. Rain, Lasoni, Boyd, and Pearson on the bench. Did I put Pearson on the bench? I think he's gone. Anyway, oh no, he's there. There's no real depth. There's not much star power. If Ash Taylor goes walkabout again because he's sad or he doesn't want to play anymore or whatever his problem is, I don't know what it is. Tyron Roberts will go to halfback. I dare say they'll put Peachy at 5'8" and someone else at centre. Then you think for depth they've got Bryce Cartwright.
Yeah. And you know that there's a really good chance they're going to play him, even though that ship has sailed. Like, it's over for Bryce Cartwright.
It's amazing.
He would be really good in Super League, hey?
Well, I'm not even sure.
I mean, he doesn't defend. He doesn't like to tackle.
But if you cannot, I could not find an argument or justification to put him in the Titans' best 17-man squad. And after what I've just read out, you go, that's bad. I mean, that's the level he's at. You think that last year at Penrith, he was being talked about being, a possible New South Wales State of Origin player. Now he can't even make the lineup in the wooden spoon side.
Yeah, and like if you see him play, and he'll play this year, but when you see it happen, you'll be like, oh man, something's gone terribly wrong here for him to be out in the field. It's crazy. I can't remember too many players that have fallen off so hard, and man, I mean, the way that he plays defensively, whoever their Queensland Cup team is, what is it, the Burleigh Bears and the Tweedhead Seagulls, they'd be hoping that he doesn't get knocked back down to them, because he's going to be a problem defending at that level. Really, I feel so sorry for Titans fans. Can you imagine being the Titans fan, looking at that lineup and thinking to yourself, what do you get excited about?
Yeah, I think the only thing to get excited about is this might be Ash Taylor's last year. And there's no way knowing, even the worst board in the world, and this includes Justin Potato, would say, you know what, we were impressed with how you went. We're going to give you another $1 million for another 4 years or 3 years or 2 years. He's just not going to get that money again. His next contract's going to be at least half of what he's on now.
If he's really, really lucky, if he gets someone that's desperate, that I think we could see the most exciting thing for the Titans are players that they sign. And look, we saw on the NRL players poll that the Gold Coast is a destination a lot of players would like to go to. But man, they're going to have, I mean, if they really want to get quality players, they're going to convince them that they're not just going to piss a few years of their career away on the Gold Coast. Holbrook needs to show something as a coach, bring something together with this squad. If he can do that, maybe they can entice some real talent there. But, I mean, if they got rid of everyone in that starting lineup, I think it'd be a good thing, hey?
Well, they've got a few first graders who are off contract at the end of the year. They've got Jai Arrow, Dale Copley, Anthony Don, Keegan Hipgrave, Ryan James, Sam Lasoni, Nathan Peets, Kevin Proctor, Tyrone Roberts, and Sam Stone are all off contract at the end of the year.
And I mean, when the best player there in that list is Jai Arrow, in my opinion, right? He's been trying to go to South Sydney for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
They just need a full club clean out, and they didn't go hard enough in the off season. They should have got rid of more players, shipped them wherever. And yeah, because this season's going to be rough. It's going to be real rough.
So, what's your coronavirus ranking there for Justin Holbrook?
It's his first season, so I've put him at number 2 on the ranking. He would normally be number 1, but the Titans are well known for their absolutely catastrophic decisions, and so that's where I've put him. Where did you have him?
I've got him at 3.
Okay, yeah.
I'm fairly certain he'll see out the year. Mm-hmm. But if there's a wooden spoon and there's not much of a clean at the end of the year, and not much in the way of new signings coming in for next season throughout the season, yeah, I can't see them having too much faith in him. I don't know what they'll do, but it's a risky one there.
You have them finishing on the ladder.
Last.
I had them in 14th place.
Wow, you've got them improving.
I've got them improving, and I have 2 teams that I think are worse than them.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
There's a carrot for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, I reckon.
All right. Next up, we've got Manly, and they've brought in Danny Levi from the Knights. Luke Metcalf's been upgraded from development, and Braden Musgrove also from the Knights have come in. They've lost Kane Elgin and Trent Hodgkinson, who have both retired. Appy Coruscant has gone to the Panthers, and Lloyd Perrott has been unsigned.
This is going to be really boring for me. I almost have them doing the exact same as they did last year. I don't expect Trebojevic to play much for them, Tom. At fullback, I think he's going to be injury prone this year once again, unfortunately. I had them finishing in 6th place. I think that the coach is safe. I've got him as a number 1. But yeah, I basically had this as a carbon copy of last year. They're going to be a solid team. They're not going to have enough to really challenge for the premiership. They're going to have a bit more consistency than the lower 8 teams. And yeah, it sounds super boring though, but that's how I think they'll go.
Well, let me mix it up then.
Okay.
I've got them finishing 6th.
Yep.
I've got the coach at a ranking of 1.
Yep.
And I don't see there'll be pretty much any change to their team that played last year other than Danny Levi comes in on hooker.
Yep.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. It's so boring, but in a good way for the Seagulls.
It is. They've got a consistently good side. I'll tell you what, if Tom Trbojevic, though, stays fit for at least 18 games this year, they are a top 4 side.
I would agree with that, yeah. And I made my finishing position based on the fact that I think that I wouldn't be shocked if he played 6 games or less.
Yeah, I think he'll get double figures.
You reckon?
Yeah. He tends to get at least 10 games most seasons. But
I really hope he does.
Yeah. I want to see him have at least 20, 23 games in a year and just miss a few to Origin. That's all I want to see him miss. I want to see Tom have a big year. Surely his body's getting a bit tougher and a bit better now and can handle the week in, week out, because he's an absolute star for that side. DCE, just class.
Yeah, and last year he went to a new level with his game in that the consistency was the best of any halfback in the game. He dragged them to a few wins that they should not have got. And I think it was the first time in his career, and it's weird because he's still relatively young for a leader, but I feel like it was the first time in his career where he really showed true leadership. It wasn't just something that they hoped out of him. He stepped up into that role. And he's the heart and soul of that team. There's no doubt about that. I think it's going to be a pretty good year for them, and that's aside from sitting on a hill and breathing in all the asbestos in the world. I think that Sea Eagles fans should be really excited for this year.
Yeah, there's one player in their lineup that I'm just not sure on, and it's Dylan Walker. I just don't know where he should be playing.
Yeah,
I don't think you can put him at centre because Parker and Sully have got those slots nailed down, and I'm not convinced he's a 5'8", but there's no other real place for him.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
I was going to say that I think Cade Cast is probably another full year away from being first grade quality, and I wouldn't be surprised if Walker's contract ends this year, and so the idea is to just let Cade sit on the bench, and he'd be perfect to come in and start next year, and they just let Walker go.
Yeah, and I feel as though, if Cast gets off to a great start for the season, or if they've got a youngster in the lower grades that all of a sudden comes out and starts killing it, I think if they get a foot in the door with that 5'8" position, I wouldn't be shocked if Walker just finished the last third of the season in reserve grade because he can't get back into the side, because it really does feel like they sort of throw him in there at 5'8" because, what else do you do with him sort of thing.
Yeah, there's nowhere else to put him, essentially, what they're doing.
But I agree with you that he's the one thing in that lineup that sort of stands out as not being ideal. The player I'm looking forward to seeing for them this year is Curtis Sirenen. He really come on at the end of last year, and he started to show a little bit of the signs that, as a junior, people were saying, watch out for him because he could be a State of Origin player. If he just plays a little bit better on top of that, I wouldn't be shocked to see him on the bench for New South Wales.
He's definitely got the size, the ball skills, and the capabilities to be playing at a much higher level. I don't know. He has had a few injury issues which have hampered him a bit. I've said it before online. I think the Tigers coaching dramas that went on in those previous years when he was there were a big reason as to why he struggled to cement a place, because he was always destined to be a back rower. But he played all his junior footy as a 5'8" or a halfback. He's just too big a human to be playing in the halves.
Yeah.
But what the Tigers should have done is, after that first season where he fielded in the halves occasionally, played pretty well, they should have said, right, next year you're playing in the centres. So you can still use your ball skills, but you're playing a bit wider. You're going to learn how to run lines, and give him 1 or 2 years there, and then move him into the second row. Instead, they went and took him from 5'8" and put him in the second row. And imagine doing that with any other genuine 5'8". Like Darren Lockyer, we need you to play in the second row.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how the size of the body. It's the mindset. Yeah. He's got to go from being someone who's naturally inclined to run to the line and pass late or drift sideways, that sort of thing, to running committed straight forward and smashing into someone, when that's not really been part of your makeup in your brain. And I'm not surprised it's taken him a few years and a change of club to really start to get it. Yeah, he did play really well last year, and I hope he does build on that and has a fit season, because I think he does have the potential to be one of the top line back rowers out there.
Yeah, 100%. And he really did towards the end of last season. The timing of his running and just how powerful it was, it caused a lot of teams problems. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he goes. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really good season for the Seagulls. I don't know that they've got what it takes to win the premiership, but if Tom Trbojevic is healthy, they're in the race.
That's right. They're an absolute threat if he's healthy. Next, the Melbourne Storm.
Yes.
Plenty to talk about. I was going to say, there's plenty to talk about here because for the first time in a long time, they've had quite a few changes to their squad, and it's not just a bunch of lower graders who they've lost. It's a bunch of, genuine first graders.
Yeah.
So they've brought in Brenko Lee from the Titans, and Riley Jacks comes back from the Gold Coast as well. And they've upgraded Aaron Penny, Darren Schoenig, Nico Hines, and Isaac Lumalumi from development. They've lost Will Chambers to Japanese rugby, Solomon Akata to rugby, Joe Stimson to the Bulldogs, Billy Walters to West Tigers, Curtis Scott to the Raiders, and Brody Croft to the Broncos. Basically all first graders they've lost. Chambers had to go. His last 2 years were largely subpar for him.
Yeah.
But Brody Croft, as you said before, just what are you doing?
Yeah. And I mean, Jerome Hughes is, I think there's no doubt last year he showed he's a bloody good, true footballer in the sense of, in a Tyrone Peachy sort of mould.
Exactly.
That you could almost chuck him anywhere and he'd get a job done for you. But he doesn't have that polish at halfback that I believe you need. And I think that was a really, really bad mistake by Craig Bellamy. I think it took the wind out of their sails last year and potentially cost them a premiership when they made that move to drop Croft. When I look at this team, this Storm team, and it's really weird, I've never felt this before, but it feels like the team that a coach is putting out there, knowing that he hasn't got the time to develop a bunch of youngsters, and he's putting a team out there that he hopes can do a job for him. But this is probably the least impressive Storm team that I've seen for many, many years, maybe the entire time under Bellamy. And I think that the issues surrounding the hooker role with the hooker role of Smith. So I'm not going to try and say that anyone's going to be pushing Smith out, but you got Brandon Smith there, who's waiting in the wings, and he's a hooker. And then you've got the young bloke, what's his name, that wants to go to the West Tigers.
Harry Grant.
Yeah, Harry Grant. And Harry Grant, you've got massive raps on him. You believe he's the future of the hooker role at the Storm. But he is out and out saying, look, I want to play for the West Tigers. And that's not something that we've ever seen out of the Storm, especially under Bellamy. And so I just worry about, I think that they're going to do all the Storm things, right? They're going to come out, they're going to be the best coach team in the comp. They're going to play really well. They're going to be consistent and things. But I don't think they've got that edge that they've had in the past. And I think that they're less scary than they have been in the past.
Yeah. And the thing that's crazy for them too is that the genuine first grade losses don't end this year, because next year Vunivalu goes to rugby union, and they may also lose Josh Adokar as well.
Yeah.
And Cameron Smith obviously is going to retire.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's like, I don't see this as a team where the coach is making changes for the future. And I wonder if that's because Bellamy knows that his future lies elsewhere. Maybe not at the end of this year, but maybe the following year. And that worries me.
Yeah, so the best lineup I've got for them is Pappenhausen at fullback, Adokar, Marion Sevi, Justin Olam, and Vunivalu in the three quarters, Munster and possibly Riley Jackson the halves, Jesse Bromwich, Cameron Smith, Asafa Solomon in the front row, Kafusi, Kenny Bromwich, and Dale Finnegan in the back row. Brandon Smith, Kame Kamita, Christian Welch, and Jerome Hughes on the bench. And I say Riley Jacks possibly in the halves because I wouldn't be surprised if Cameron Smith is at halfback a bit more this year and Brandon Smith starts at 9.
Mm-hmm.
And they might just put another forward on the bench instead of having Riley Jacks around. And that would mean that Cameron Smith does less defence and doesn't have, I suppose, so many big bodies running at him. It also gives Brandon Smith proper time in the hooking role, knowing that he's going to have that permanently next year. So it's a good way to transition him into that role while still having Cameron Smith on the field with him to, show him any little tricks and stuff he needs to learn along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a team that's definitely in transition.
With that in mind, and the Storm being as weak as they are, where do you have them finishing?
I've still got them at 3rd.
I've got them 1st.
And the coronavirus rank for Bellamy?
1. He's fine. He's safe.
1. Yeah.
Yeah. I expect that, and I'm just going on history, whenever you worry about the Melbourne Storm, they come out and have a ridiculous season. They'll no doubt have a bunch of players that we've never heard of that are probably in for test contention by the end of the year. And I've seen it too many times where I've been worried about the Storm. You look at their lineup, you're like, oh man, this isn't looking good. And they're minor premiers. So that's what I've gone with. I'm just going on history.
As you should. Now, we move on to the Newcastle Knights here.
Mm.
And another season where they've had a fair few players come and go, I guess. Not as much as the previous years, but
yep.
They've brought in Jaden Brody from the Sharks, Bradman Best, Stafford Toa, and Jura Momosia have been upgraded from development. Anara Tuala's come from the Cowboys, Shibasaki from the Broncos, and I think they've brought in Tyrone Roberts-Davis, who was at the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
And they've lost Sean Kenny-Dow to Hull KR, James Gavay to Huddersfield, Jamie Burer and Zach Wolford have been unsigned, Ramian's gone back to the Sharks, Slade Griffin and Nathan Ross have retired, Danny Levi's gone to Manly, and Beau Fermor's gone to the Titans.
Fair few losses. I mean, there's no one there that you sort of think are world beaters or anything like that, but that's still a lot of players to leave the club. When I look at this Newcastle lineup, I know I rate him higher than you do. I think Callan Ponga is a shining light there. I think David Clemmer is amazing. I love David Clemmer. I enjoy watching him play in this Knights team. Bradman Best, it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
I'll tell you what,
of them,
Mitch Barnett is very underrated in this side too.
You reckon?
Yeah. I like the way he plays. I think he's a very underrated player. And there's big talk that, and I sort of have subscribed to the theory as well, that Phoenix Crossland might be playing in the halves in round 1.
They need something in the halves. They need a spark in the halves. Normally you would look to Callan Ponga to come into that role, but I think he's at fullback. He is exactly what they need. And there was a lot of times last year when Mitchell Pearce would go MIA when the game was close, and poor old Ponga was left to do all of the playmaking. If he can just get someone to help him do that when Pearce goes missing, that would be great for the Knights. But I look at this Knights team, and they're under a new coach, so you don't know how that will affect them. But I'm just not impressed.
Yeah. Their best lineup that I've got for them is Callan Ponga at fullback, Edric Lee, Bradman Best, Totau Moga and Heimel Hunt in the 3 quarters, Crossland and Pearce in the halves, Clemmer, Brayley and Daniel Saifidi in the front row, Fitzgibbon, Mitch Barnett and Tim Glasby in the back row, with Guerra, SASA, Jacob Saifidi and Sione Mataudia on the bench. Interesting there, I don't have Connor Watson in the side because I don't think he's good enough for first grade.
Yeah, I agree. I feel as though he needs to get more consistency, and
And what position does he play?
well, that's the other thing.
I
Like,
saw one thing, I think it might be on their website, where they listed him at lock. He's never played there before.
and there's a place for players like that in certain clubs. Like, if you've got a club that's there or thereabouts, you can have a player like that on the bench, and they can do something for you. But I think for a club like Newcastle, it's not the place to have a player like him.
No, it's just not. They've got quite a few rookies in the back line there, and their pack it's pretty damn good now. Again, depth is going to be a little bit of an issue up front. And if Pearce gets injured again, then that's going to be a bit of a drama for them. So, with that in mind, I don't see much change in their performance. I've got them at 12th this year.
Okay, I put them at 13th this year. So I feel the same way. They're kind of going to be the same as they were last year. I think last year, with that run they went on, I think that was a little bit of a false economy for them. I think they ran into a lot of teams that, for whatever reason at the time, they ran into them at the best possible time. They beat a lot of teams that really should have beaten them during that run. And yeah, I just think it's going to be the same sort of season for them. The only difference I could really see is if the coach comes in and does some sort of miracle coaching job on them. But I mean, bloody hell, he'd have to coach his ass off to do that.
Yeah, because the coach is going to be rookie Adam O'Brien. This is going to be his first season as an NRL head coach. What's your coronavirus rank for him?
I've got him as number one on the virus ranking. It's his first year. I don't even think the Knights would sack him if they had a terrible year. But I kind of hope that he comes in, sees what he's got, and then takes control of the club and doesn't let outside forces have the main controlling interest and the ear of the supporters. He needs to make this club his own.
Absolutely. I've got him at a ranking of 2.
Okay.
And it's only because he is a rookie. He's probably on next to no cash. And if the Knights have a severely worse season, the board just might go, yeah, piss him off, get someone new. It's not going to cost us that much.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough.
So next we've got the Cowboys. And this is when we were both umming and ahhing over a fair bit.
Yeah.
Pardon me. They've brought in Reece Robson from the Dragons, Easton Masters from the West Tigers, Connolly Lemulu from the Bulldogs, Ruben Cotter, Thomas Gilbert, Danny Russell been upgraded from development, and Valentine Holmes from the NFL. And they've lost Matt Scott and Scott Bolton, who are both retired. Kahu's gone back to the Broncos. Anara Tuala's gone to the Knights. Tamaria Martin has retired. Javid Bowen, Gideon Gillum-Osby, Kurt Baptiste, and Carlin Anderson have all been released.
Yeah, they had a bit of a clean out and they needed it. Yep. I think that Green, he was a little bit lucky to be in a position where he had a lot of runs on the board at the club, and so he's had a bit of leeway that I think a lot of other coaches wouldn't have got. I think a lot of other coaches would have been out after last year. I really like some of their signings. Valentine Holmes, if he can come back and even be 70% of the player he was when he left, he'll add a lot of attack to their backline, which they desperately, desperately needed. Masters will also add that. A lot of it, I think, rides on Morgan, and if he's healthy, he got a couple of head knocks last year that were the sort of head knocks that were, scary in terms of, like, you don't like seeing a player getting a head knock, but it seemed to be something that he didn't really shake. It seemed to get worse for him, and you hope that doesn't happen this year. But yeah, I think they'll go better than they did last year. I've got them finishing in 8th spot.
Yeah, I've got them at 8th as well. I think they will sneak into the finals, and I do put a lot of it down to a revamped backline. because their back line in the last 2 seasons was, let's be honest, it was boring.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the ball went out wide, just went,
yeah, exactly. And I mean, this was a team that, I mean, they were carried by Jason Taumalolo last year, and unfortunately, they didn't have much on the back of what he was doing. And I think that just having Valentine Holmes on the back of that, it's going to be interesting to see what he does out of dummy half, I think, this year. Playing at fullback, if he can get into dummy half at the right time, he can break the game open. He's got that ability. I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
He's one of those genuine X-Factor players. He knows when to inject himself in a game too, which is another big thing.
Yeah.
One thing I want to see this year from the Cowboys, well, actually 2 things more than anything. I don't want to see Asiata playing in the halves anymore. I mean, it's impressive that a big man like him can actually ball play in the halves, but Paul Green, he's in the forwards, just leave him there. The other thing is, I want to see Cohen Hess pull his fucking arm out of his ass and actually rip in this year.
If Cohen Hess does that, it makes this Cowboys pack scary. Really, really scary. But if he plays like he did last year, it might be the end of his first grade career. Like, that's how bad he's playing. He's walking into the John Carlaw school of, you're playing yourself out of a career here, Yeah. That's how bad he played last year.
He was just timid half the time.
Yeah.
That's something he wasn't when he first burst on the scene. And, he got his origin jumper because he wasn't that. He was hitting the line hard every run, and then that just stopped. And he needs to get that. He needs to get his mojo back. So the Cowboys lineup I've got for them is Valentine Holmes at fullback, Felt, Masters, Opachik, and Murray Tuolagi in the 3-quarter line, Clifford and Morgan in the halves, McLean, Granville, Asiata in the front row, Cooper, Maguire, and Tormalolo in the back row, Wright, Hess, Francis Milo, and Scott Drinkwater on the bench.
Oh, you got Drinkwater on the bench. That's interesting.
Well, I think you've got to put him there because if there is any head knocks to Morgan, you're going to need someone who can ball play in the halves.
And
he's a pretty handy player. He'd also be, I think, handy to come on and replace Granville for 20 minutes in every game or 30 minutes in every game at hooker.
I tell you what, if he could do that, it'd be so good for them because they need that. They need as much attacking spark as they can get because, as you said, last year there was just none of that, and that's what they really, really missed.
Yeah.
That would be huge for them if they could get that out of him.
Also, if they can get Maguire to keep his hands out of people's eyes and focus on just playing rugby league, that would be fantastic too. Because when he focuses on playing rugby league, he's a bloody good player.
Yeah, 100%. And especially with this forward pack could have a really good balance. Even Jordan McLean he's a really solid performer. He was a fringe New South Wales player at one point too. If he can get back to that form, he'd be fantastic. And, as you say, if Maguire can just play footy, forget all of that other rubbish. If Hess can be what Hess was even a couple of years ago, Cooper is the most consistent player in the world, and Tamalolo is the best forward in the world by the length of the straight. This forward pack can carry this team somewhere special. But there's a lot of players there that need to do their job, and I worry about that for the Cowboys.
Exactly. So what's your coronavirus rank for Paul Green?
It's a 4.
Yeah, I've got him as a 4 as well. I think he might be in his last or second last season there.
Yeah, if it goes poorly, especially he made a lot of changes. They brought in Holmes, which is a very, very good signing. Eason Masters, a very good signing. There were enough changes made that he should be able to do something with this. And if the team doesn't respond this year, then as a club, you just have to look at who's left, and the coach is one of the things you'd have to look at changing.
Yep, fully agree. All right, moving on to one of our favourite teams here next, Parramatta.
Yes, it's going to be an interesting one.
So they've brought in Ryan Madison from the Kleenex factory because he's been spent most of the year last year crying about how hard he had to work. Ooh, sassy.
Yeah.
Regan Campbell-Gillard from
Penrith. A little bit of salt in that one.
Yeah, okay. Regan Campbell-Gillard from Penrith. Hayes Dunster, Ethan Parry have both been upgraded from development, and they've lost Tim Manor and Matt McCurrick, who retired. Manu Ma'u's gone to Hull FC. Tapai Mairo's gone to Rugby. Greg Lillisuyo, who's gone to the Titans, and Josh Hoffman has been unsigned.
Okay. Andrew, I really like the Parramatta Eels this year.
I'm not going to get sucked into. You know what? I think they're going to be pretty good too.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you the things I like about it. Right? I like that they are pretty much almost the exact same side they had last year.
Mm-hmm.
Very settled lineup. The changes they made, or the additions that they did have, I think they're positives with very little downside to them.
And they are upgrades.
That 100% they're upgrades. I thought that Dylan Brown last year, towards the end of last year, and it was just in the last few weeks of the competition, he went from being a youngster that was kind of handy to stepping up and being a scary player, a scary prospect. I thought that Reid Mahoney was a similar sort of thing. I mean, I know you and me were a little bit perplexed as to a lot of the raps he was getting earlier in the season, because I think that we both didn't think he deserved them at that time. But by the end of the season, he was doing some things that were really, really impressive.
He was playing with a lot of confidence at the end of the year, and he was looking very, very sharp.
He really was. And when you add all of that together, I like the wingers are scary. Acevo is a destroyer of worlds. Blake Ferguson gives you just the highest quality wing player you could want. Jennings is still a quality back. When Waka Blake, when he plays at his best, he can be absolutely terrifying. If they had a first-grade fullback, they'd be a terrible backline to face. But, you know, I don't rate their coach at all. I've got them finishing in second place. And I think that if they just hook it up at the right time of the year, they might do it.
Yeah, you know, I've got them finishing fourth, but I think the top four are going to be, even the top five are going to be pretty close this year. And I don't think there's going to be much between them. Maybe 1-2 wins.
I agree.
I was on the Full Credit to the Boys podcast earlier this week, and they said on there that they think Parramatta are a genuine premiership contender because of that kicking rule and the, you know, attacking kickers or attacking kick chase cannot be tackled.
Yeah.
And that's going to favour them big time because Moses showed last year he's got a fantastic kicking game to the wing.
Mm-hmm.
And you got someone like Sevo who's now got really good hands. He started the year a bit uncertain with his handling, but that really changed by the end of the season. He was perfectly fine. And Blake Ferguson, who is phenomenal in the air. When you've got two big targets like that to kick to, and knowing that just inside those you've got the speed of Michael Jennings, and Wonga Blake is no slouch either. There's so many targets they can kick to out there. And then you throw in the fact that 3 in from out wide, you're going to have Sean Lane, who's 19'7", and Ryan Madison, who can play as a 5'8" or a centre anyway. Man, so many targets to kick to whenever they get to the last. All they're going to need is their front rowers to protect Moses whenever he's on the last, so he doesn't get, because he will be targeted heavily this year, more so than ever.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that that's why I really am excited to see how Dylan Brown plays, because if he can if he can be the sort of player that can take a little bit of pressure off of Moses, that's going to be absolutely huge. And the thing about Moses too is, and he showed this at times last year, he's a little bit rocks and diamonds. But if he can be diamonds at the right time of the year, that's where for me it's. I think they're a premiership threat, and it's weird to talk about it like that with this team. But it's on the basis of the fact that for the most part, it's the same team as last year. They all know their roles. They're not going into this season not knowing how they play. They know what they've got. They know how they play. They know that it works to a certain extent. They've improved their team. And I've got them in second place for that reason.
Now, I'll bring up two negatives to make it feel a bit more normal.
Okay.
Regan Campbell-Gillard was an absolute plotter last year.
Yeah.
He can't be like that this year because the one thing that Parramatta needs if they're going to win is their forwards laying a good platform because their backs are just unbelievable backs. They've got skill and X factor everywhere in the back line except for Gutherson. The other issue too is Brad Arthur has consistently failed to make back-to-back final series.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that for me, if they had a good coach, and I don't rate Brad Arthur, I think he's had plenty of time to prove himself. I think that I would be saying they might possibly be the team to beat this year. But with Brad Arthur being the coach, that really, really worries me. I agree with you on Campbell-Gillard. Look, if he can be 80% of the player that he was at his best, he'll do the job that they need him to do. If he can get back to his best, it's going to be terrifying playing the Eels because he is a really good ball runner. He was fantastic.
Absolutely.
Man, it's going to be a really fun season for Eels fans. They should have ridiculous crowds at that stadium, that beautiful stadium of theirs. This is a team that really should be thinking about September already.
Now, what's your coronavirus rank for Brad Arthur?
Well, considering that he had that catastrophic, terrible loss last year and they gave him a contract extension just 24 hours later, if there was something beyond number one, I would say that.
I've got him as 2 because I think he is an absolute 1 if they stay in the top 8.
Mm-hmm.
But I worry if they don't make the finals this year I don't worry. I think the Parramatta board might say, you've been here a bit long and you've not been consistent enough. We need better. And they might start looking elsewhere.
They would have to sack him. They would literally have to sack him because with that lineup he has and the fact that it is so settled, if they don't make the finals, I don't care how much they've got to pay him out. They need a new coach.
Exactly. All right. Penrith.
Yes, your 2020 premiers. Let's do it.
The first of the 2 biased reviews that we'll do tonight.
What do you mean bias? I can't wait to go on the parade through High Street. It'll be fun.
So they've had a few changes. They've brought in Abby Coruscant from Manly, Dean Blore, Sean Blore, Stephen Crichton, Braden McGrady have been upgraded from development. Kurt Capewell comes in from the Sharks and Zane Tedavano from the Roosters. They've lost Campbell-Gillard to Parramatta, Sione Katoa to the Dogs, Tim Grant and Sam McKendry have retired, Wade Egan to the Warriors, Tyrrell Fuimaono has gone to the Dragons, Hammy Selly, Frank Winterstein, Pea Pua and Nikki Louis Toso have been unsigned. That's a lot of cattle changes around the especially in the depth area, but also in some of the first grade spots as well.
Yeah, it is. I think the basis of their first grade side, though, there's a lot of players around the edges there, and like reserve grade players that they lost from that list. And I think the additions they've made, they're not fantastic additions outside of Coruscant, who I think is going to be one of the best buys of the year. I think he's exactly what they needed. They needed a spark out of dummy half, and he's exactly that spark. I do worry about their pack still. Their pack was the softest pack in the comp last year, I believe. And, that still does worry me. I need something from James Tarmo. Like, just something, dude. Like, you're massive. Go and look in the mirror. You're a giant dude. Go and play like a giant dude. Kickow, I think, is going to be even better this year, which is kind of scary to think about. He looks like in the preseason, from what I've seen of him, and from what we saw in the test matches last year, he looks like he's learning a few things beyond just the fact that he is an absolute giant that is physically gifted. He's learning some of the nuances of what he can do with the gifts that he has. So that'll be huge for Penrith. Nathan Cleary has got another year under his belt. I've never worried about Nathan Cleary. They've got a lot of depth in the halves, which is really, really key for the Panthers. I think there's a lot of changes they can make in the halves, which would be really good. I think Luai is going to be, I think he'll get the job done. And I think he showed that last year in the test matches. I mean, was that something that you got out of his performance in the test last year?
Yeah, he's sort of one of those off-the-cuff type players. But I think he's also someone who I can see would be able to be molded to be have a bit more controlling aspect in his game as well, without losing too much of the X factor stuff.
Yeah, and learn to pick his times to do the X factor stuff.
The only concern that Penrith's going to have this year is, again, that's going to be a consistency thing, because pretty much their entire backline and their halves are all youngsters.
Yeah.
Like, if it was 1970, not one of them would be allowed in a pub.
Yeah. They'd be flat out playing first grade, some of them, just because they're too young.
But that's not a criticism, though, because, by God, they've got some talented backs there. This is the lineup I've got for them. It's going to be a lot different to what most people have. And feel free to make changes to it if you want. But at fullback, I've got Caleb Aikens. I've got Dylan Edwards and Brian Tu'o on the wing, Stephen Crichton and Brent Naden in the centres, Luai and Cleary in the halves, Tamo, Coruscant, Tedavano in the front row, Kickout, Capewell and Fisher Harris in the back row, with Liam Martin, Spencer Linu, Moses Leota and Isa Yeo on the bench.
Yeah, look, I like that lineup. Farai, I feel as though is if he's in your lineup, it's because you've got an injury, and he's a really good player to bring in that sense. But I don't think he just doesn't give you much, Dylan.
I think we saw enough from Crichton and Naden last year to see that those two kids are exciting.
Yeah. Dylan Edwards, I don't like him at fullback.
Likewise.
So I prefer him on the wing. Josh Mansour, look, it's going to be an interesting season for him. I love him. When he's on his game, he's fantastic. He's exactly what you'd want for this Penrith team. He has talked about his struggles coming back from that horrible, horrible facial injury he had, and I don't think that you can say a bad word about his performances last year when you take that into account. It's going to be, but the thing is that Penrith, he's under super amounts of pressure just because they've got so many youngsters lining up for them wing positions. So it's going to be an interesting year for him. I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up playing for another club next year, and it'll be a great buy for another club next year if that happens. But for this Panthers side, I think it all comes down to their forwards. If their forwards play soft, they're going to go nowhere.
I think they made enough changes on. Like if Tamo can pull his finger out, and I think we saw at times last year that was starting to change. I think as much as we were probably somewhat critical of it at the time, I think giving him the captaincy did make him realise that he needs to start leading by example, and it started to have a bit of a positive impact on him. Not as much as needs to be, but it's a move in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Ted Ivano, I think, is a pretty good pickup, as is Capewell. They're both good hard workers, and so that's going to toughen up both the front row and the back row. And Fisher Harris, I think he played pretty solidly last year as well. And I think if the pack is performing better around him, he'll lift his game to match them.
Yeah.
So I think they've made enough, just enough changes there to improve their pack. Coruscant has a huge advantage that side, though.
Massive addition, and the absolute perfect sort of hooker for this pack. The other thing I think they need to do, and I think Kickow started to do it in the test last year. Kickow needs to, and it's part of his development as a player. It's not a criticism, but when he realizes that he can make a massive impact in the middle of the field and then pick and choose his spots when he goes wide, that's going to change the Panthers pack. Because I think if they took him and said, look, forget all of this playing out wide stuff and just the magic you do and the nightmares that you give players out wide, just become a front rower. I think if he just become a front rower, he would be one of the top front rowers in the game with his go forward alone. Because he's just so massive. He's just a giant. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think if he does some of the work up front, not heaps of it, because you don't want to dull him in attack out wide, but if he does a little bit of that up front and then looks to go out wide, I think it changes the way you look at the Panthers overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus at the moment, he's just sort of parked out on one side, and he tends to get the ball at the same sort of time every time when the attack's not really going anywhere.
Yeah,
they just sort of go throw it to kick out, see if he can create something, which can make him a bit more predictable, and that's something you don't want a unique player like him to become, is predictable.
Exactly, and I think it also draws mistakes out of him, because he kind of knows, look, if I'm not throwing this pass out the back, we're not going anywhere.
Exactly.
And I think he forces it, and it's not even a criticism of him. I almost put that at the feet of the coach. But there's also the flip side of that, whether I wonder if they've thought to themselves last year, let him learn, let him work it out, and we'll take the bad with the good this year in hope that going forward he will work that out. And I think that last year, towards the end of last year, you sort of saw a few things of him in the tests where you're like, there was just a change in his game where I feel as though he worked a little bit out.
Yeah. So where have you got Penrith finishing this year?
I have them finishing 7th, which is not too dramatic a jump for them. I think that the fight for the top 8 is going to be, I don't think you're going to have as many teams involved in it, but I think the teams that are involved in those lower positions in the top 8 are very close to one another. And so I've had them finishing in 7th position.
I've got them finishing 10th, but I think the top 8 from 7th down to 11th is probably going to have 1, maybe 2 wins between them.
Okay.
Another reason I've got them there is because it's a very young spine other than Coruscant. I mean, Coruscant's pretty young anyway. And, when you've got such a young spine, there is going to be times when it doesn't click, or one of them's trying too hard, or, inconsistency happens. So they're going to be a confidence team more than anything. When the confidence is up, they're going to go on a run. When it goes down, they're going to go on a losing run. And that's how I see them going in this season. What's your coronavirus rank there for Ivan Cleary?
I have him ranked as number 1 because if they were to sack him, they owe him about $10 million.
I've got him at number 2.
Okay.
I think I would have had it at 3 if
Yeah.
if Phil Gould was still around.
Oh, well, if Phil Good was still there, you could have made him 5. You just
But
sign him for 4 years and then you get rid of him after 2 and pay, 40% of their salary while they do something at another club.
at the moment, he's been coaching for 2 years, so I've got him up to 2 because I think he might be getting tired soon.
He's getting How dare you?
He might need a nap.
I will say this about Ivan Cleary. The honeymoon is well and truly over. He has to do some coaching now. He has to show us why he's on so much money.
Well, because his son.
Well, there is that. And this is the problem you have. Like, if you want to have Nathan Cleary there for the next 10 years as a Panthers fan, his dad can't be sacked.
Yeah, it's a pretty good idea by Ivan, really.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm rubbing my forehead. Can we move to the next team?
Because this will give you a bit of relief. The Dragons.
Oh, we're going the Dragons. I thought we were going Souths.
Oh, no, I'm mixing it up. We'll go to the Dragons.
Okay.
So they've got new faces have come into the side. Tyrrell Fuimono from the Panthers, Isaac Luke from the Warriors, Eddie Blacker, Jackson Ford, and Jason Subb have been upgraded from development, and Braden Williami from Catalan. And they've lost Jonas Pearson to the Titans. Jerry Lattimore's retired. Gareth Widdop's gone to Warrington. Reece Robson's gone to the Cowboys. Stephen Masters has gone to South. And Mitchell Allgood, Jai Field, Lachlan Maranta, Patrick Kafusi, Darren Nichols, and Lachlan Tim have all been released.
Man. I don't know what to say, Dragons fans. Part of me loves parts of your team. And then I remember who the coach is, and I just get sad.
I look at their squad, and I say, I wish I could see most of those players at my team.
Yeah.
Even the kids they've got there, I just look at them going, what a lineup. And then you look at where they finish on the ladder and you're going, what a fuck up.
Yeah, and look, like Paul Vaughan, fantastic prop. James Graham, he's got another year on him, and I've always worried about this with James Graham, that he's going to get old overnight because of the way he plays. He'll try his ass off no matter what, but I just worry about that with James Graham. Tyson Frizzell, I worry that he is already looking at the next team he will be playing for because he's sick of this shit. Tariq Sims, he's a Sims. He's going to be a world beater some weeks, and then you're going to wonder what the fuck is he doing. I thought it was weird bringing Trent Merrin back. Did you think that?
I thought it was a bit odd, yeah. I mean, it's not a criticism of Merrin because he is a good player. There's no doubt about it. I just thought I didn't think they'd go there. And their backline, I mean, they've got a lot of guns in the backline there. I might as well just go through the lineup here. I've got them down as having Tristan Saylor at fullback.
I like that.
I've got Zach Lomax on the wing with Pereira on the other, Aiken and Laffey in the centres, Norman and Hunt in the halves, Vaughan, McInnes, Graham in the front row, Tarek Sims, Tyson Frizzell, Trent Merrin in the back row, Corbin Sims, Isaac Luke, Jackson Ford, Blake Laurie on the bench. My God, that's a good looking side. That forward pack just looks so balanced.
It really, really does. They should be looking, and if they had a decent coach, we're looking at at least a top 5 side.
Agreed.
But they're terribly coached and they're terribly managed, and the players aren't stupid. They know it. It just sucks because they're probably going to start the season off really well, and we're going to love watching them play, just like happened last year. And then it's all going to fall apart, and Dragons fans will be in for a really long season. and I just hate it. I just hate it. Like I like so much about them. I like their halves. I think their halves are really good. I think
Yeah.
Norman and Hunt is a really nice. There's a nice balance between them, and there's a nice bit of a change between them. But man,
I like so much of their team. I think Sailor should be the first choice fullback, but I know that a lot of the talk suggesting that he may not even be in the starting 17, and Lomax will start at fullback. And Lomax will do a decent enough job there, but I think I think he's that sort of X factor type player, kind of like when Valentine Holmes come along. You just got to put him in there. You just know he's ready for it. Kalen Ponga's another one in the same mould. Just chuck him in there.
Valentine Holmes is the best comparison I've heard for Sailor. He's a really, really good comparison. Just someone that he just has that extra something, and you just want him on the footy field.
Yeah.
And like we've talked about, where's his position going to be? And there was a little bit about that with Holmes as well. And so like he was mostly just chucked on the wing, and he still did his thing once he found his feet. I feel like I kind of agree with you. I kind of want to see him get that run at fullback and see if that's his position.
Especially knowing that he's one of the best performers in the gym at the Dragons. We heard about this all off season. He's probably lifting heavier weights than most other players. I think with that upper body strength like that and the leg strength he's got, man, put him at fullback and just let him run at full pace into any lineup and say, try and stop me.
Yeah, and the worst that happens is they fail, which is what they're lining up for anyway with the coach they've got. It sucks because I'm like you. I look at this team and I'm like, man, there's so many good players here.
Exactly. Because of the coach, I've got them finishing 13th.
I have them finishing 12th.
What's your coronavirus rank there for Paul McGregor?
5, please. Make it happen. The sooner the better.
I want it to be 5, but you and I both know it's 1.
Look, okay. Say he starts off the first month and a half and they're 4-2, which is really, really possible with this lineup. Would you be shocked if they did something really weird that just cemented his place further?
Not at all.
Like, I don't know that they can give him any more of a contract extension than he's got now, but if they I don't know, if they put like family members in around him or brought them into the club or something. I just wouldn't be shocked.
It's so dispiriting seeing a team that should be in the top 5 and just knowing in your heart they're going to finish in the bottom 5.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, really is.
And I say this with all honesty, I really feel for Dragons fans because that team deserves such... Even an average coach would get them in the top 8.
And the weird thing about them last year, they started off great and the coaching was so poor, and you actually saw it break the players, which I don't remember happening too many times, where the players were being asked to play a style of game which they were never going to be able to sustain, and the coach broke the players.
Yeah, completely. Let's hope Shane Flanagan teaches them something, although he's not a very good attacking coach. So he might get the forwards to perform in a different way, which is more suitable, perhaps.
Yeah, if he can give the forwards a better rotation to work off, or work on, allowing their depth to take pressure off their starters and not burn their starters out. At the very least, if they just did that, it would be a positive.
Agreed. Move on to South now. They've had a fair bit of big names come and go from the club, so it'll be interesting to see how they go. So they've brought in Latrell Mitchell and his Mercedes. Bryson Goodwin from Warrington, Troy Dargan from the Broncos, Stephen Masters from the Dragons, Patrick Mogo from the Broncos, Josh Cook, Dean Hawkins, Keon Kolamatangi, and Kai Rodwell have all been upgraded from juniors. And they've lost John Sutton, Greg Inglis, and Sam Burgess, who are retired. George Burgess went to Wigan, Dean Britt went to the Dogs, Connor Tracy to the Sharks, Billy Britton to the Dragons, Maween Hiroti to the Sharks, Adam Dewey to the Tigers, Kyle Turner and Jacob Gagan have both been released. Whew.
It's big changes, hey.
There's a lot of changes there. Not a huge amount to the starting lineup, other than in the forwards. Really, I mean, losing Sutton and Sam Burgess takes a huge amount of their forward pack.
Yeah, and I think the loss of Sutton is quietly their biggest loss, because you knew what your Sutton was giving you, and he was super reliable, and he has been for Souths for a decade plus.
He's a real Luke Lewis type player.
Yeah,
just constantly reliable and dependable.
Yeah, and not only that, like, he did have that touch. I mean, he used to play 5'8". He did have that touch of ball playing about him too.
Mm.
So he gave you a little bit of something extra at times. There's been all the headlines about Latrell Mitchell, and rightfully so. I think it'll take some time to work out that fullback spot, but he'll work it out. He's a fantastic, talented player. It'll be interesting to see if he changes his body shape a little bit, and maybe drops a little bit of the weight that he carries as a centre, that allows him to have a power game, just so that he lasts longer in games. And that's going to be really interesting to see. I don't think he needs to. It's not like he's got to drop, fat or anything like that. I just think he might change his body shape a little bit. So,
most of the time for centres, that they do have to bulk up. More for the defence more than anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's something he's not going to have to worry about too much, is the defensive workload at fullback.
Yeah.
So I do get what you mean. I don't know. I don't know that his body shape needs to change at all, really. I think he just needs to do a bit more work on cardio and running, because you do so much more running at fullback, obviously, than what you do at centre. But I don't know. A lot of people are very doubtful that he'll work at fullback. I actually think I'd give him 3, maybe 4 games, and I think you'll start seeing him playing very good football there. I don't think it's going to take him that long.
Yeah, I think within the first month of the competition, he's going to do something that's going to make everyone go, "Oh shit," we
were
he's
wrong.
Working it out, I just have a feeling. When I went to the Test match last year, I was kind of shocked at how big Latrell Mitchell was in terms of his height and his frame. He's a massive dude, and I wouldn't be shocked if he decided to just make himself just not carry the bulk that, as you said, that a centre needs. For the rest of this South team, there's parts of it that I like, but I think that their forward pack is really, really not that good.
I don't think it's too bad, but boy, are they thin on depth.
Yeah.
Real thin.
Yeah, like when I just think when Thomas Burgess is projected to be your starting prop, that's a problem.
Agreed. But let's have a look at their best lineup. We'll talk about it a bit more in a sec. So we've got Latrell Mitchell at fullback, Campbell Graham, Dane Gagai, James Roberts, Alex Johnson in the back line, Cody Walker and Adam Reynolds in the halves, Liam Knight, Damien Cook, Thomas Burgess in the front row, Jaden Sewer, Ethan Lowe, Cameron Murray in the back row, Tavita Satola, Mark Nichols, Tom Mamoni, and Stephen Masters on the bench.
Stephen Masters, I called him in the lower grades last year. He looked like a first grader to me in the lower grades, and so I wouldn't be shocked if he forced his way into the side and He's obviously going to take a little time to get up to first grade speed, but I think when he does, he's going to be a really good signing for them.
I'll tell you one thing that worries me about this side is their centres.
Yeah.
Gagai and Roberts. He reminds me a little bit of Dale Shearer, and that is when he gets to rep level, he's fantastic. But at club level, you just go, why can't he play like that for us?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I feel as though if they could have moved him on, they would have.
Yeah.
And it seemed like they were going to, and it didn't work out for them.
And James Roberts has been, I'm going to be harsh here, he's been a dud since he moved to South Sydney.
Yeah, I think that they got that money freed up from Inglis, and they blew their wad, and I was shocked by it because I just think they wasted an opportunity. They really wasted an opportunity. Roberts does show, flashes of class, but there's not that consistency underneath it.
No, nowhere near it. So I think they've got possibly the best wing combination in the game outside of the Storm, and maybe even Parramatta. And Campbell Graham and Alex Johnson are just genuine try scorers.
Yeah, Johnson especially. Johnson's one of those. He's one of those players that he just can't stop himself scoring tries. I think going back to the wing will be really good for his career, actually.
Yeah. Cody Walker, he looks to have overcome that horror patch of form he went through last year after his Origin debut.
Mm-hmm.
He started to get back in the groove when the finals come around. So I'm hoping he starts this year in the same form he started last year, because my God, he was unbelievable last year at the start of the season.
He was the best player in the comp for the first, 2.5 months, 3 months?
Hands down. No one was near him. This forward pack, oh boy. The back row's not too bad. Obviously Cook's a quality hooker.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is just, even the bench, you just go, wow. 1 or 2 injuries there, and they are a huge problem up front.
Yeah. And the other thing too with this South team, and even at their best, it was the number one problem. Adam Reynolds will look like he's just on a roll. He's got his game, he's killing it, and then he gets injured. And unfortunately for South, he usually gets injured in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the competition and has to drag himself through the final series.
Yeah. In saying that, I don't know. There's something about that side I just look at it and think, especially when they're coached by Wayne Bennett, I think they're going to do okay.
I think they'll do the typical Wayne Bennett side thing, in that they'll have an extra consistency because he brings a consistency to teams, but they won't have that X factor that you need to really win the premiership.
Agreed.
And I think that they've done a really smart thing in getting ready to show Bennett the door, because I think this team, if he was the one that was in charge of everything for next season, I could see this turning into a Newcastle situation where when Bennett leaves, you kind of look at the lineup and think, what the hell happened here? I don't think they're going to suffer that, but I do think that they've got some problems that they need to fix with this team, and I don't think they'll win the premiership. And I wouldn't be shocked if by the end of this year they've come to a conclusion that they need to move on from Adam Reynolds.
Big talk.
Yeah, and look, I love him as a player. When he's healthy, he's a fantastic halfback. He gives you so much. But you just, how many times are you supposed to see a season's hopes dashed because one of your best players just always gets injured. You can't
Yeah,
keep doing that.
no. Um, so despite our heavy criticism, I've listed South as coming second.
Okay. Wow, that's. I've got them coming I've got them coming fifth
Yeah.
because
We
I
come down
think
hard on, but we still place them pretty highly.
yeah, it's they worry me. They really worry me. If they had a really bad injury toll in the forwards, it would turn into a disaster because they've got zero depth, and I don't know who they'd call up if they just have a bad run up
Yeah.
front.
Yeah, their forward depth is a genuine worry.
Mm.
Now, we get on to the Premiers, the Roosters next.
Yes.
And they've not had much changes. They've had some pretty decent losses, though. A few players you may have heard of. They've brought in Kyle Flanagan from the Sharks. That's it. And they've lost Latrell Mitchell to the Rabbitohs. Cooper Cronk's retired. Ted Avana's gone to Penrith. And Bernard Lewis has been released. It's... A lot of people were worried about Flanagan coming in replacing Cronk. I mean, that is a massive pair of boots to fill.
Mm-hmm.
But he looks like he's fitted in sort of seamlessly into the Roosters' attack, which has been, I suppose, not entirely unexpected given he's already shown he's a class player.
Yeah.
And if you're a rookie and you want to make your debut somewhere, that's a pretty damn fucking good squad to have around you to slide into as easily as he has.
Yeah, and I think he was an absolute steal. I can't believe that so many other teams didn't throw big money at Flanagan, because like you and me thought he was fantastic for the Sharks last year, and yeah, fantastic situation for him, great buy for the club, and yeah, they've lost Cronk, but he's a damn good replacement for Cronk, and I think that the fact that his dad's a coach, that's an extra thing that I don't think many people factor in, but I think is huge, because this is a young bloke that's grown up in first grade dressing sheds and has seen premiership wins firsthand, and so he's got an extra bit of life experience that most young halfbacks do not have. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. So the best lineup I've got for them in 2020, James Tedesco at fullback, Tupou, Brett Morris, Joseph Manu, and Matt Ikuvalu in the three quarters, Flanagan and Keary in the halves, Maria Hargraves, Jake Friend, and Torquiaho in the front row, Cordner, Crichton, and Radley in the back row, with Orbison, Butcher, Liu, and Lindsay Collins on the bench.
Yep, and I think they're probably gonna get Morris at some point. I'd be kind of shocked if that didn't happen. Hey,
I think if Josh Morris comes along, you'd probably move. Would you move Tupou to the wing and put both Morrises on the other wings? I don't know. It's hard to know where you put them. I mean, Ikuvalu would drop out of that back line.
Mm.
Josh Morris should come in there somewhere. Maybe put Josh at centre and Brett in the wing.
Yeah, I think I'd put Morris in the centres, just for the fact that they have lost Latrell Mitchell, and Morris is one of those players that you can put him into that centre position and know that you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah,
it's just one less thing to worry about as a coach. From when you consider that, I mean, Mitchell's such a big loss in so many different ways. It fills a hole in their team that, and Morris, I mean, he's such a professional. It's just almost the perfect replacement for a budget sort of buy.
I suppose another player that the Roosters have got to fall on if they need any depth in the back line is Ryan Hall.
Fucking dare you. I'm a little bit shocked that Ryan Hall's still on their books.
Yeah, it's a pretty long holiday he's had in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah. And when I say their books, I mean both sets, allegedly. But yeah, I thought that they would have said to Ryan Hall, listen, Ryan, it's been fun, but you probably should look at going home. Um, he
In
must
the
be
in the
on,
friendliest way possible.
yeah, please, we'll take you to the airport. Um, he must be on very, very little money. That's the only thing it can be. And if he come over on very little money and he's here just as much for the experience of it all as anything else, good luck to him. And it's nice that the Roosters have kept him around. I wonder if he is actually back from that injury yet.
I don't believe he is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's a good side though, and it's basically unchanged with the two losses they've got in Cronk and Mitchell have been pretty capably covered.
yeah, and very well coached. I think that last year, uh, the thing that I really liked about what they did last year was the way that they would have, like, say, injuries and suspensions and stuff in their pack, and they rotated their pack so well, and the players that they brought in did the job. It was almost like something that you see in Craig Bellamy coach sides in that
Mm.
he would bring players in, Robinson would bring players in, and he would give them a real specific role and just stick with that and do that job. And that's what they did really well in their pack. And their backs were so classy. So, and if they can win the premiership this year, you got to start looking at them on an all-time scale, don't you? I mean, I'm not saying best team of all time, but you've got to group them in with those all-time teams, don't you?
Absolutely, you do. Absolutely. Even Melbourne, when they were playing with a heavily illegal side, couldn't win 3 straight premierships.
Mm.
So it's a hell of a feat if they do it. I do have them finishing as minor premiers this year.
Wow, that's really interesting. I have them finishing fourth just because I think they're a couple of players depth lower, and I think that the Latrell Mitchell loss in terms of there were a few games last year that Latrell Mitchell decided to win the game and no one could stop him. And so I think that they'll drop maybe a win or two from that. But my thing is for a team that has been a 2-time premiership winning team and they're going for 3 straight, and the grind of that and the extra games of playing in the grand final, and then you throw the World Club Challenge on that as well. I'm giving them a little bit of leeway in having them finish fourth. I think that I've got no doubt they're a premiership threat, obviously, but I'm just giving them that little bit of leeway in terms of dropping a couple of games that they might have won last year.
And what's the coronavirus rank you've got there for Trent Robinson?
1. He has no chance of being sacked.
Nah, I'm the same. He's a very solid one.
Mm.
Next, we've got the Warriors.
Oh, man.
This is always tough.
Yeah.
So the Warriors have brought in Jermaine Tanua-Brown, Adam Pompey, and Elisa Katoa, who have been upgraded from juniors, and Wade Egan from the Panthers. They've lost Blake Ashford, who retired, Isaac Luke to the Dragons, Tavita Sate to Hull FC, Liggy Sau to Hull FC, and Sam Lasoni to the Titans. If ever there was a team that needed to have a bit of a clean out and didn't even bother, it's the Warriors.
Yeah. We said, when was it? A couple of weeks ago, I think we said that. I know I said you could keep Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, you keep Harris Tavita, and if you got rid of every single other player, I think it would have been a good thing.
Yeah, it's hard. Again, for me, it's another situation kind of like the Dragons where I'm putting more of the blame on this side's complete lack of performance on the coach, not so much on the players. Because I think if you've got a decent coach in there, they would be much more successful than they are. I don't think the squad is Titans like bad.
Oh, no.
There are some parts of it that are, but nowhere near as much all over the park.
Mm-hmm.
So the lineup I've got for them for 2020 is Tuivasa-Sheck at fullback, Fusatua, Patrick Herbert, Peter Hiku, and Cam Mawalo in the three quarters, Harris Tavita and Blake Green in the halves, Parsi, Carl Lawton, and Lisa Name in the front row, Pulu, Harris, and Tavanga in the back row, and Papali, Lachlan Bird, Bunty Afoa, and Hayes Perham on the bench.
So you didn't have Nikorima in there 17?
I can't find a place for him. I don't think he's got the defensive ability to be an outright hooker.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's too erratic as a half. Besides, I want to see Harris Tavita at 5'8".
100%, yep.
I don't see Nikorima as a player who can control a game. And I especially don't see him as being able to control a game better than Blake Green. And for me, that's saying something.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where to put him. And I think Hayes Perham is long overdue a spot on the bench. And he's going to be a long-term player for them. Possibly when Blake Green leaves. Hopefully Harris Tavita is able to take over the 7 job. Perham can move into 6. I don't get the Nikorima purchase. I don't know what they planned on doing with him. And to think they've got Lawton and Wade Egan who are genuine hookers as well.
Mm. Well, that's the thing. When they brought Nikorima, right? I can understand, because they brought a New Zealand Test player back to the Warriors. And if you look at it just purely as that, it's like, wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But as you say, what was the plan? I don't understand it either. If they have him coming off the bench as a hooker option, maybe, but it's still not ideal. It's not like he gives you some incredible change-up, you know?
That's right. I mean, if you want him as a hooker, why buy Wade Egan from Penrith?
Exactly. And I think Egan is a pretty good buy. I think he's the sort of buy that it's like, look, he's available. He played pretty well last year. Let's give it a shot because we got nothing to lose.
Mm.
So I don't mind that. I think Blake Green he's survived he was at Manly and he did a very specific job for them. And the Warriors wanted him to do a similar job, and I think he did that up until last year. And I think last year he reverted back to being a reserve grader. I don't think he was a first grade quality player. And I think that the way that they stuffed around Harris Tavita, who I really, really rate, was ridiculous. That he really should have been in the halves from the get-go and just learn the game.
No, I fully agree.
You know, and this really should be his team at some level in terms of being the halfback. And you can't put Nikorima beside him though, because Nikorima he's not a 5'8".
Yeah.
And he's just going to put pressure on Harris Tavita because he's going to be the only playmaker on the field. It's the same problem the Broncos had when Nikorima was at the Broncos. That's why they got rid of him.
Yeah. And that's why Blake Green serves a purpose. He'll be able to help Harris Tavita, by being solid and stable and consistent in what he does. It may not be brilliant, but it is consistent. It gives Harris a pretty solid base to work from as a halves partner, whereas if you had someone like Nikorima who's erratic, it's hard to build a combination when your halves partner's either on fire and you don't want it to go near him because just let him have the ball, he's got spiders on him, or he's playing so crap you go, holy shit, I've got to do all the work now. I think
and
a young half needs that consistency that Green will give.
Exactly, and he needs that... the last thing a young halfback needs is to realise that he's in a game and the opposition has worked out. They don't have to worry about the other half. They can just target him all game.
Yeah. So it's a frustrating thing because they do have a number of decent players there, but I don't know what's gone on with their recruitment of forwards. They've got so many great big men to choose from that are playing for New Zealand at test level.
Yeah, something is broken in that sense, isn't it? Like, because even when they were at their worst, they would produce forwards that maybe were flawed, but that they still had the ability to be unbelievable players. They're not producing those players anymore.
No, I mean, when the tired old Adam Blair, who will give you one, maybe two hit-ups a game and just make 20 or 30 tackles, is still one of your first options in the starting lineup, according to that coach. That speaks volumes to me. I didn't put him in the 17 because I don't think he deserves to be there.
I'd agree with you.
We both know he'll be one of the first picked every week.
Yeah, and despite how he plays, I've told this story a bunch of times when he was dropped last season, and I called the next game, and it was in the New South Wales Cup, the Canterbury Cup, and Adam Blair was one of the worst players on the field, and I said, look, if that was his performance that he's put in at reserve grade level to try and win back his first grade spot, he's done. His career is done. And he got picked in first grade the following week.
Yeah, and that's just so disappointing.
Yeah. Before we go to there, I just want to say, watching Roger Tuivasa-Sheck in this side, his greatness is just undeniable. And I'm talking like he's starting to become one of the greats of all time for me. Because to do what he does behind this horrible, poorly coached team, I don't think I've ever seen a player do that.
No.
And this everything he does, and it's not just the fact that he is a giant and is overpowering players physically. The touch of class and the skill that is on top of that is just incredible. And I feel so sorry for him. This is a player that should be the centerpiece of premiership winning clubs. And to see him doing what he's doing on this team is just, he deserves all the credit in the world, because behind some lazy performances last year by his team and poorly coached performances, he was putting in 10s every week. And I think that, if you love rugby league, just watch the Warriors just to watch him play, because you're watching greatness.
Absolutely. Now, where did you have them finishing?
I had the New Zealand Warriors finishing in 15th place.
Likewise, I've got them 15th. And what's your coronavirus rank there for Stephen Kearney?
5. If he is not sacked, then the board and the football manager and everybody in that front office should be sacked.
I agree. He's a 5 for me as well.
Okay.
Lucky last. The West Tigers. All right, so they've brought in Billy Walters from the Storm, Luciano Laulua from the Dragons, Joey Laulua from the Raiders, Adam Dewey from the Rabbitohs, and Zane Musgrove has finally come across to the team after I think he got found not guilty of whatever it is he got up to, or he's done his time or whatever. I don't know what it was. Anyway, they've lost Robbie Farah, Robbie Rocco, and Ben Madalena have all retired. Ma'i Fanua's gone to Hull FC, Ethan Masters gone to the Cowboys, and Ryan Madison's gone to Parramatta. And as we've discussed several times already, we won't go into too much detail, but obviously with the news that Jacob Little, the heir apparent to Robbie Farah, went down with yet another lengthy injury, the Tigers made no effort whatsoever to replace him with another hooker. So it means Josh Reynolds is expected to be the first choice to fill the vacant number 9 jumper. But there is some sense behind it because he has spent more than a year studying up close one of the best hookers going around.
Andrew.
What?
He did. He watched Robbie Farah closely, didn't he?
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, of course.
Were you thinking of something else? I don't know what you're talking about.
No.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's a bit of a debacle having a 5'8" who's barely played any footy for the last 2 years automatically becoming your first choice number 9.
Yeah, and like you go from Farah, who had an incredible year last year, and then you had Little as the backup, who was an injury-prone hooker, and you replace him with Josh Reynolds, who's playing out of position, who's been injury-prone for the last 2 years. And you don't make really any effort to make sure that position is shored up. I don't understand it.
And as I said before, it's crazy because we had Isaac Luke looking for a club. Even West Tigers fans approached him on Twitter saying, "Mate, come to the Tigers. We need someone like you." And he replied, "I would happily go to any club that wants me there." And I went, "Even the fans have done your job, potato." And you went, "Let's buy a centre."
When I saw Luke say that, I thought this is too perfect. This is like a slam dunk. I can't believe that they've recruited a player based upon Twitter, and then they didn't do it.
It was nuts. It was so wrong.
And then you've got and you don't know how close he was to going there. But the idea that you are in the race for Latrell Mitchell, but you don't want to pay overs for a super young, super athletic, goal-kicking, game-breaking, try-scoring test centre.
Yep.
Why don't you want to overpay for him? Why?
They want Joey Lalua instead.
Yeah. I don't understand it.
Right. Let's go through the Tigers lineup here.
Yeah.
Adam Dewey at fullback, David Nofaluma, Moses Mbai, Joey Lalua, Robert Jennings in the 3/4, Benji Marshall, Luke Brooks in the halves, Oliver Clark, Jacob Little, Alex Twile in the front row, Chris Lawrence, Luke Garner, Matt Eisenhuth in the back row, Thomas McKaylee, Josh Alloway, Luciano Lalua, and Billy Walters on the bench.
You know what? If Brooks and Marshall, that's potential premiership win and halves combo. It's just the other 15 players.
I'll say this, okay. Most of their forwards are fantastic depth players.
Yeah.
Alex Twal is a definite starter for me. Luke Garner is coming along well. Eisenhuth is a solid worker. Thomas McKaylee had a brilliant first season last year. Looks like he's going to be a pretty good front rower. I'd say the rest are really good depth players.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, I guess. And it's kind of the same for the back line. In the trial, I think last week I saw David Nofaluma make one of the worst ever reads for a winger I've seen since Ryan Hall last year, where he ended up standing 5 metres in front of the centre before the ball even went past the centre. You're going, what are you doing there? And Joey Lalua gave him an absolute roasting, as he should have done.
He gave it to him immediately. It reminded, and I said this because you showed me the replay of it, and it reminded me of Crocker down in Canberra, just running out of the line, taking no one, and then turning around and watching the play unfold. But he did it as a winger. It's like, what the hell?
It was horrible, and I thought that one play right there was Nofaluma pretty much stamping himself out of the team for round one. I don't know who they bring in to replace him with, but crazy. I know it seems cliche to say the Tigers will finish ninth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be very optimistic and say they finish 11th.
I have them finishing last.
Them bites.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. As I said, Benji Marshall and Luke Brooks is a premiership winning halves combination, in my opinion. And if they were in most other teams in the competition, it would be it's like such a good combination between those two. But I think that their forwards don't have the depth, and I'm not too worried about too many of their forwards. I think they'll work hard, and but they don't impress me. And the back line is shocking. Mo who is injured, he had a couple of good games at centre last year. I
would prefer to see Moses and by fullback. I think he's a little bit better there because let's be honest, he's a 5'8", but he's not a better 5'8" than Benji Marshall. So at fullback, he was capable under the high ball. He did run the ball back reasonably well. He's a better fullback than Clint Gutherson. So for me, I'd put him at fullback, but then you go, right, well, they brought in Adam Dewey. Where do you put him? He's not big enough to be a centre, so Dewey's got to be fullback and Mbai's got to be a centre. Which just means Paul Momorowski now doesn't get a spot in the side, and he's a goal kicker, and he must be somewhat useful because the Storm wanted him.
Yeah, like when the Storm want one of your players, I feel like you need to sit down and have a meeting and say, what are we missing?
Yeah.
When they bought Adam Dewey, I didn't understand it.
Still don't.
I feel like he is the sort of player you see playing in reserve grade and you're like, oh yeah, he's pretty good at this level. But he's not a first grader.
All I can assume is they've got him in to be Benji Marshall's replacement next year, which means this year he's playing a fullback to make up, just to waste time, I guess. Which means this year's just another written off year already for the Tigers because they've got players out of position for the years just to make time till Benji retires, which just seems stupid.
It really does. And did you see Benji said that he's going to see how he feels at the end of the year because he could go around next year as well?
If he plays 80% as well this year as he did last year, I'd be happy for him to have another season.
So would I, yeah.
He was unbelievable last year. It's the best season he's had in a long time. I just wish he could have one season at the Tigers with a proper forward pack in front of him.
Yeah, he's starting to go into the Steve Carter realm in terms of he just deserves better.
Yeah.
Because the loyalty he's shown, most other players, the fact that he wants to go around, he knows he's not winning a premiership this year. He knows he's probably not playing finals this year. And he's looking forward to the season, and he's looking possibly at playing again next season if he's up to it. He said he's just going to see how his body feels. That says so much about what he thinks of the club. And yeah, it's like it reminds me a little bit of Steve Carter in that you just wish he was doing it in a side that could take him somewhere. Man, I really do. This is a team, and I don't blame the coach. I blame the administration of the Tigers for allowing. They're just in a perpetual state of rebuilding. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's a never-ending construction.
Yeah. And then when they get the chance to get a fucking test player, they don't pull the trigger and instead get Joey Leilua. And I'm not bagging Joey Leilua. He'd normally be a pretty good signing for a lot of teams. But Joey Leilua, was somebody sitting around saying, you know what? We get Joey Leilua, that's the one. That'll put us over the top. It's like, what the fuck?
Especially when they had options to get Isaac Luke on the cheap, Danny Levi on the cheap to play at hooker.
Yep.
Like, neither of them would have cost the world. They would have been as cheap as chips. And there's been forwards moving around all over the place, and they didn't chase a single one of them.
No.
It's just face palm. Anyway,
And I know I'm labouring the point with Mitchell, right? But look at the back line that they've got. Look at the overall team that they've got. And tell me where they spent the extra fucking money that they could have made Latrell Mitchell. Just get him to the club and worry about it later. You know,
yeah,
get someone you can build the fucking team around.
all I can think is they've got most of Ivan Cleary's dud signing starting to leave at the end of this year. A lot of cap space being freed up. All I can think is maybe they wait until then and they're going on a shopping spree. I can't see any other reason why they're holding back. Look, there is one small glimmer of hope for the Tigers, and that is Harry Grant is keen to come across and play because he knows he's going to get a first-grade gig, and that's what he so desperately wants. And he knows he's not going to get at the Storm this year, a regular first-grade spot. So he's been training most of the season at the Tigers, and so knows the system well.
Yeah.
Wants to play there, has a desire to be at the club, and he's now looking like he's going to be asking for a release. I can't see the Storm granting it to him unless he brings up a very strong case, because the Storm don't want to lose him. But if they can get him, that changes this side quite a bit, because I don't see when Harry Grant gets to the club, if he gets to the club, that Jacob Little gets his spot back in that starting side when he's fully fit. I think Harry Grant would take it, nail it, and would never lose it.
Yeah, you'd have to move on from Little.
Well, you keep him as depth, but that'll be it.
Yeah.
But and if you've got that, then you can say, right, now we can focus on spending big money on getting some starting props and at least another back rower, and then they've got the depth already there. They've got the basis for a good side already there. The problem is they don't know how to get the X factor players they need to be in front of that basis and steer it to where it needs to go. They just go, this is good enough. And they've got to stop thinking that good enough is actually good enough, because it's not.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, you look at their side, and this is a team that is spending allegedly the same amount of money as every other team in the competition. And you wonder how that's even possible, especially when you consider that Benji Marshall's been playing for unders for forever for this club, and Luke Brooks took unders in the hope that they could keep other players. So Luke Brooks is getting less than what he should be getting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, where are they spending that money?
They would have the cheapest spine in the comp, bar none.
Easy.
Bar none. So, saying all that, what's your coronavirus rank there for Michael Maguire?
I don't blame Maguire. I think he did a fantastic coaching job with them last year. They need to just let him do his job and let him recruit the players, give him more control over this team and its future. In saying that, I had him as a level 3 because it's the Tigers, and they're terribly run. They're so terribly run, and I can see where they would get to a point where they'd say, wow, geez, I wonder why we're not winning games. It must be the coach.
See, I've got him as a 2, only because I think Michael Maguire would have been smart enough to go into the meeting when he signed the deal with the Tigers and say, I want to be on a stupidly huge amount of money so that the thought of you sacking me is repulsive because you don't want to pay it out. He'd be the only smart operator there, and I think that's what's probably happened.
I hope that I honestly, he deserves a giant salary to be coaching this club. It's terrible because they're just so badly run. There's so many, like, they've got a pretty decent supporter base when they get on a roll. Like, fans come out of nowhere, I'd love to see Benji in these years of his career being able to destroy opposition teams in big games. I'd love to see Luke Brooks finally get a chance to lead a team in the finals and do something. You know,
Yeah, it
I
would
wonder
be
how
great.
Adam Dewey goes this year.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it all works out. So,
Yeah.
tell you what, that is we'll say it's an exhaustive season preview.
Yep.
And I suppose we should probably wrap it up at that note, given it's gone on for quite a while.
Yeah, look, we're going to upset some fans by what we think, but this is our opinions. We'll see if we're right or wrong by the end of the year. It was interesting that we didn't cross-reference each other's ladders going into this, and a lot of them were very close to each other. I think the Tigers was maybe the biggest difference, and the Roosters maybe, but
Yeah,
that's about it. We were very close with most of the other ones, I think.
on the Sharks.
Oh yeah, the Sharks.
But that was it. Just those
Panthers
three.
as well. I think you had the Panthers 11th, didn't you?
No, 10th.
10th, yeah.
That's not too bad. We've been pretty good.
Yeah. I agree, Andrew. We've done great.
Sure. All right, well, people, I suppose let you know that you can follow us now on YouTube. Go on there, subscribe, like the videos. That would be fantastic. You can follow us on Twitter at FergoFreakPod. You can now follow us also on Instagram, also at FergoFreakPod. We're also on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. You name it, we're there. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you like. We're on everything. Check us out on our website, fergoonthefreak.com. And I suppose that should be about it, eh?
Yeah, it's been a fun episode. Can't wait for the season to kick off. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Catch you next time.